Welcome and thank you for tuning in to the human training your dog is begging for. If you are needing help understanding your dog and their behaviors, you've come to the right place. I am Charles and joined by Laura. We're the co-founders of Canine Culture Dog Training in Dallas. Good morning, Laura.
Good morning.
And as always, we have lead trainer Julie joining us today. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
And head of dog evaluations and senior trainer Wyatt. Good morning, Wyatt.
Good morning.
So today we are going to be talking about tools. It could be a touchy subject with many people in the dog training world, whether you're just a dog owner or a dog trainer. As always, our focus with our podcast is educational. We want to give you more information to help you understand your dog, why they do things, and hopefully help alleviate some pain points you may have. And a lot of pain points and training involve tools. And what is a tool? A tool is anything basically that you would use with or put on a dog to help change a behavior, modify a behavior, correct a behavior, or teach a behavior. Literally, a tool is a leash. I think some people skip right over that. The most important, I think, tool in our arsenal is the leash. Leashes are directional, not necessarily correctional. They provide the ability for us to communicate with our dog. Everybody on board with that one?
Yes.
Yep. So it's not just keeping our dog from running away and restricting their movements. It's really, if your dog understands a leash, it's the best way one of the best ways to communicate. And the better your dog understands, the more subtle your communication can be. So subtle, in fact, that the average observer sitting in a vicinity of you would never even know you just communicated with your dog because it was just a flick of a finger through the leash. So that's an easy one, tools. But let's talk about that one because I think a lot of people pick the wrong leash.
Yes.
How I look at a leash is first, what's your dog's skill set? Do they understand the leash? After you determine if your dog has the right skill set, now what are you going to be doing with the dog at this moment? Is this just a leisurely stroll, or are you trying to incorporate some training into this stroll, or is it all about training? Why that matters is the length of the leash and the type of leash you have is going to vary based on what your objective with this walk is.
Well, and how well trained your dog is too.
Yeah. So if you have a dog that doesn't understand a leash and you are walking your dog with a flexi lead, that's a nightmare. That's
Oh yeah.
That's why flexi leashes that spool out and spool back. That's why, in case you didn't know what a flexi is, that's why they get a bad reputation. Is a lot of dogs that are on them should not be on one because they don't even understand a leash yet. And now you're giving them so much control of the amount of freedom that they have.
Also, it's very dangerous
And
in general.
Yeah, if you Google or you search on YouTube videos or pictures of, you Google it too, injuries caused by a flexi leash, you'll see some hellaciously brutal looking wounds to
Well, it's not just the
legs and dogs' bodies.
The leash wrapping around you and then the dog pulling it. It's even just because dogs, they're strong, but they're really how they break people's momentum.
Yeah.
The
speed they can build up in a flexi leash. I mean,
They get a lot of
They get a lot. I mean, even if they don't knock you down, Bubba, the dog I had growing up, he went through 3 flexi leashes,
because
just
he
broke
the spool.
interior pieces.
Yeah.
That was decades ago.
Yeah. But other dogs, that's the videos where the people get pulled across their own yard or off their porch. It's flexi leashes.
Yeah. And the flexi leash, if it's around your dog's thigh when he does that, and it's a burst of energy, he can. That flexi can slice through his flesh deep into the muscle or your leg. So I guess we just went into flexis instead of leashes. We'll work right back to the leash here in a second. But now, I do like flexis.
Yes.
But I only like a flexi after my dog understands a leash. Mm-hmm. I like the problem a lot of people do with the flexi is they want to give their dog the ability to sniff and explore. Hey, that's great. But if your dog doesn't understand when there's some tension on the leash to stop pulling, and better yet, look back at you or come back to you, they should not be on a flexi. I like a flexi to work some distance work out in the world with my dog. But as soon as I feel pulling, no, you're not going to get any more. A flexi can inadvertently teach your dog to pull, because what happens is they pull, they get a little more line. They pull, they get more line. So they associate, hey, if I pull, I get a greater distance that I can work with. And then you give in and give them that, you spool it out. You have literally just trained your dog to pull on the leash.
Or they might be really good on a 4-foot leash, but as soon as that flexi leash comes out, they know, oh, I'm just going to pull with this specific
Right, because they
leash.
associate the flexi as freedom. So the transition would be, no, we're going to go through all the same drills with a 4-foot leash or a 6-foot leash that we would, once you get them onto the flexi leash, because you got to teach them. The rules are still the same. You have a lot more distance we can work together with, but the rule is still the same. You pull, you come back to me. We're not that. I think that's where people really screw that flexi leash up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just looks so convenient because it's like all in one length.
Yeah.
And it's really just not very good at any of them.
I guess that's why I like the flexi if I'm working distance work over a 10 or a 15-foot
It's
leash.
easier to.
Because I'm not dealing with, at moment, I'm not dealing with a big hunk of 5 or 6 foot of leash that I have to keep the dog from getting tangled up in or myself. The flexi will take care of that.
It's definitely a end training goal, because you can screw up your recall, your pulling, your leash walking if you jump the gun and go to a flexi leash before you're ready to, because then they'll, like you said, they'll untrain pulling.
Yeah.
It's...
Any other, Laura, Julie, feedback on flexis?
No,
Okay.
I don't like flexis.
I'm
Yeah.
not a fan at all.
And really in flexi, so Julie said she didn't like them. A lot of trainers don't.
Yeah.
But then there's some, really popular trainers out there that swear by them.
Yeah.
It really comes down to personal preference.
I definitely see the benefit if you're a trainer or professional using it. I think that the average owner does, even if after they've gone through a training program, I feel like they're still not going to have the like a good skill set to use it in an average everyday training session outdoors, especially if their dog is outside.
Right.
They're attempting to work on recalls. They want a thing that's going to reel in. I feel like that's exactly when they're going to mess up.
Yeah, because your timing has to be pretty good with any training. But with the flexi, you're going to inadvertently train your dog to untrain your dog, basically, of everything you just spent your time training your dog. If you're not diligent about your timing with that flexi leash.
I'd also rather just train myself to reel in a leash better than even deal with the flexi leash. It's a lot.
Yeah, and I use flexis in training, but I'm very specific on what I'm trying to accomplish with the flexi.
Yeah.
And like Julie said, a lot of people just don't have the skill set to use one. And you got to remember, they are dangerous. If you get your dog in the habit of running around on the far reaches of that flexi, they could slice you open or slice themselves open.
Or run around a corner where you can't see them.
Right.
Or
There's one good thing about to use a flexi. If you're going to an open field and you're just going to let your dog just smell do
and
scent
explore.
work, just get their brain going, they're great for that. So you don't want
because then you're not dragging this long leash out.
with all the
Because the
crap.
flexi is so light.
So that's not a walk. That's just letting your dogs explore. Stuff.
Yeah.
So that is that's a really good thing to do.
And a good point on that is you could take the flexi with you if your dog doesn't necessarily do great on one. So you're carrying it. They're on a leash until you get to where you go, and then you put them on the flexi and let them explore.
And dogs will learn once that flexi is on. But if you do it this way, they will know that now I could just go explore stuff.
Yeah, they will associate the behaviors that they're allowed on every tool. So I guess we'll jump into harness and then we'll come back to regular leashes.
okay.
That comes back to harness. So I really don't like harnesses. Anybody like harnesses here?
No.
Julie, why don't we like harnesses?
Oh, because they reinforce pulling.
They reinforce pulling for real.
Literally.
That's what they're made for.
If you have your dog on a harness, and a lot of harnesses look really cool and they're cute, but think of just stop and think, why was a harness created?
Sled dog.
Sled dogs,
Sled dog.
working dogs to pull a burden of weight behind them.
Yeah.
So think of it as oppositional reflex. Your
Exactly
dog
what it is.
almost can't help it. When you put a harness on, boom, they pull. It's almost instantaneous because it's not pulling on their neck or their throat or their larynx. They
It's
have their
actually-
entire body they can work against you now.
Yeah.
And even the front clip ones, you're
Those
just
are really bad
the
for their
best
bodies.
of their worst options, I guess. They still are just not a good
Yeah.
option. There's so many other better tools. It's like the Flex Lease. It works, but
There's
there's so
better
much
tools.
better options
Right.
out there.
And, I'll tell people a lot that come in with their dog on a
Harness and a flexi.
harness or a flexi or
No,
both. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
they're
Both. After training, after your dog thoroughly understands what leash pressure means, and leash pressure means if they feel any pressure on the leash, they stop pulling, they look at you, they should also return to you. But they at least stop pulling and look to you. What would you like me to do? Once your dog accomplishes that, the joke that I say a lot is you could put an ankle bracelet on your dog. It really doesn't matter because they understand the rules of pressure anytime
Yeah.
they feel pressure.
It goes beyond just the pressure. I think it also just has to do if your dog understands the command,
Yeah.
Yes.
right? So if the
Yeah.
dog, if you say heel and the dog understands to be right here, then yeah, it doesn't really matter if you have
What
Anything.
you
about
have on
anything
your
on-
dog.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would still make the argument long term, not harnesses, because the dogs aren't perfect. They are going to screw
Yeah, I
up.
Oh
just-
yeah.
And that is the time you need to get your dog's attention.
Some people
the
really
most.
just like harnesses.
Oh yeah,
And-
I think
I'm
there's
agreeing with
only-
you.
There's
and
only
they're
one-
almost like an accessory.
There's
Yeah.
one exception, I think, is if you have a dog that has a medical, like a
Oh, yeah.
genuine medical
100%,
condition
yes.
that requires them to
For
have
throat
that,
problem,
yeah.
collapse,
Yeah, like
stuff
they've had
like
their
that.
trachea collapse in the past, and they're going to
Right.
need to be
Which is
on a
fine.
harness. Yeah. The misconception is people will say, my dog pulls so much, I'm afraid he's going to get out of this collar. I have seen more dogs quickly, in the blink of an eye, get out of a harness that's even really snug on them. I don't know how, but dogs can get out of harnesses easily.
Michelle, our other salesperson, a human aggressive dog came in for an eval, and that dog was out of that harness, and she thought she was going to be killed.
I had a
It's scary.
German
And these
Shepherd
are
do that.
big dogs. These
Yeah.
are not little dogs. These are big shepherds.
He got out
yeah.
of that harness so
Zoom, zoom.
fast, and luckily I was able to just step outside the door and told the owner, "Here's a leash and a collar. Put this on, and I'll come back in the room. But I'm
Yeah.
not going to come into this
Yeah.
room while he has a harness."
Very
on.
unsafe.
Yeah, harnesses are easy for dogs to get out of.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get to the
leash?
leash. So you have a 4-foot leash, a 6-foot leash, a 10-foot leash. What's the difference between them, Laura?
The link.
The length. You're a smart ass.
How much control you have over the dog.
Oh yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I look at the length of the leash, 4 foot, 6 foot, 8 foot, whatever, is the amount of ability I'm giving my dog to make decisions.
That is true.
So 8-foot leash, my dog has 8 feet of decision-making possibilities to make. If he's making a lot of poor decisions, then I'll probably choke up on the leash and give him about 6 inches worth so I can give him better feedback. Really, my question was, what's the difference between your everyday 4-foot and 6-foot leash for a dog owner?
If 4 foot is, I think, the best if your dog's in the learning transitional
mode.
steps mode.
Yeah.
6 foot, if your dog knows how to stay in a heel or loose leash walking, 6 foot's better because they can get
Because
away.
it's a more enjoyable way.
Yeah, they can go smell stuff and they're not pulling you out.
But I think also a 4 feet leash for the owner is easier for them to handle.
Yes.
It is.
The dog is the owner.
It is.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a perfect point. So it's really a training tool, how I look at the 4-foot leash. We're training the dog to understand. We're giving ourselves the ability to communicate with our dog. And like you just said, Julie, a 4-foot leash requires the owners to have less skill
Yeah.
to learn how to really efficiently handle a leash and communicate without confusing their dog.
And not having so
That
much.
extra 2 feet, that's
It
extra.
really
It
scrambles
really
their
makes a big
brains.
difference when you're trying
Yeah.
to work on timing because you've got 2 extra feet and now your timing's off.
Yeah.
And you're you have some kind of remote or treats and praise and hand
Yeah, so you have
signs.
something
You
else
got
in your
a
other-
lot going on.
Yeah.
And now your dog's all excited. So yeah, there's 3 different things going on all at the same time. Make it easy on yourself. Use a 4-foot leash until you and your dog are one good operating unit together. Then, like you said, Laura, go to a 6 foot or 8 foot leash on the walk, because now you both know how to operate together. So that, to me, a 4 foot leash is a training leash.
Yeah.
Yes.
A 6 foot leash, we're going to transition to that, because I'm giving them more decision making ability. But the owner, you shouldn't transition to a 6 foot leash until you are really good handling the leash.
100%.
I think it has more to do with the owner now
Yes.
than the dog.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
One long leash, like 6 to 8 foot leash, that I really don't care for is that kind. So we're talking 6 or 8 foot leash, and then about 3 feet, like right in the middle, there's
Yeah,
a
the
handle
handle.
built
Oh
into
God,
it.
the worst.
I hate and despise those leashes.
Or the bungee leashes.
Yeah, we'll get to that one. So remember that one.
Yeah.
The reason, there's like a handle sewn into the middle. Julie's like, I haven't seen it.
I know,
You
my
have.
God.
If we pull
Oh,
one
yeah.
out, you
It's
go,
about
okay.
You're like
2
this.
feet from the dog's head. There's a nice padded
And
handle.
people bring their dog to a group class with that.
Oh.
And the reason I can't stand
Is it
that
for
is
comfort?
I am sliding my left hand up and down that leash a lot based on how much I need to communicate with my dog. That handle is right in the freaking way. It's either gives them too much decision-making power or
Not enough.
not nearly enough, because that 1
you don't-
foot handle
yeah.
is right in the middle of my way.
Usually it's too much. Their dog will be pulling them and they'll be nice in that. They call it the comfort zone, that handle.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, you need to be right, like on your dog's, like almost grabbing the collar because it's too much. They're too hyper.
I've also found that with that handle in the middle of the leash, so there's 2 handles, one on the end and one in the middle. Most people that use it, their dog pull like crazy. So
Yep.
they're using that handle to get a better grip on their dog.
Yeah.
Yep.
So again, you should not be on that leash then, because your dog is pulling you.
Right.
I can't stand those leashes.
It's the same concept of people that harness their dog just because there's a handle and they'll just pick
Right.
them semi
Yeah.
off the ground. I'm like, we're not accomplishing anything.
Right.
We're feeding into problems.
You are reinforcing every issue you're trying to solve.
And they're not, even if your dog's good, the handle it's a generic leash. So some dogs it's a perfect heel. Most dogs it is not.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
if
in the
you-
wrong spot
It's in
for
the
some
wrong
dogs.
spot.
If you got like a tailor-made leash,
Yeah, for
Yeah,
your dog's
you would
size.
literally
of
have
dog.
Personally make
For
that leash
you.
for it to all be perfect for the dog's
Yes.
height, the dog's body length, your height, your
yeah.
arm length.
Yeah, they're never good.
That's why it's too generic. That's like all women wear size medium and all men wear size large. No,
Yeah.
that's
Not
crazy.
work
That's
that
not
way.
how it works. All right. So there's long leashes.
Long lines.
Yeah. So they're also called long line.
Mm-hmm.
10, 15 foot are probably the most common, but you can get them 20, 30 feet,
50,
yeah.
50 feet.
50 feet.
Yeah.
That's a lot of
that's
lines.
a
That's a lot of line. Do we even have a 50 foot
Yes,
lead?
we do.
Okay.
Yes, we
I've
do.
never used it because
It's
I
insanity.
am that opposed to that much crap in my hand.
But if you're using that long of line, you're not fishing it in. The dog's coming to you.
Yeah,
The dog.
you're working on great distance.
Yes,
work
and you
with your
know that dog
Yeah.
knows what it's doing.
You're basically doing off-leash stuff, but with a safety device attached to them so you
Yeah.
can step on it. That's
Yeah.
about it.
And so the long lines are so you can start teaching your dog to operate, at
Away
a
from
distance
you.
away from us. So 10 foot is the best one to start with. Then 15, I kind of end with 15. After 15, I'm flexi leash at that point.
Yeah.
If I'm working distance work. So there's the different leashes, but we'll end on leashes with this thought. People say, hey, I want my dog to be able to do X, Y, or Z, and they're really meaning off leash. And my response is, if your dog cannot do it with dependability, with distractions present on a leash, don't even attempt it off leash. They're not
No.
ready.
They're not ready.
No.
Not ready.
Well, the
So-
worst too is, my puppy at 4 months old is off leash. It's doing everything. It's great, and then all of a sudden it changes. I'm like, yeah, 'cause you had a puppy,
Yeah.
You had a baby that was
insecure
scared of
dog
it.
that liked to walk next to you because it was afraid, and now it's confident and doing bad things. You're a little too greedy.
Yeah, that's it.
So,
But
yeah.
the bungee leashes.
Oh yeah, bungee leash. That's right.
I would associate them with like a retractable leash.
Yeah,
Same problem or harness problems. It just pull.
Why
I
would you
give you
even want
more.
one?
because it takes some of the impact out of lunges.
Oh,
But
okay.
if you're needing a bungee leash
Then you
for
need to train your dog.
soften
I
the
have a
impact of the lunging, you should probably train your dog to not lunge, right? I guess we're weird that way.
Yeah.
All right, collars. You've got flat collars. That's your typical, just 3/4 inch to inch, usually flat all the way around, different buckles.
I love flats because you can personalize them.
Yay!
They give you the most options
Like
to
20.
really personalize. Yeah, for sure.
They're
Flat
good for
collars,
them.
you can get them in, I mean, they give
They
you
do
the
whatever,
biggest
yeah.
variety of anything to accessorize your dog.
They're good for your tags.
And they're also, because of that, the easiest way to get matching leashes and really.
so cute.
Yeah, and they're kind of cute. We carry a lot of those. Flat collar is the biggest, most popular, collar in the world.
And there's different widths.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can go really wide, 2 inches.
Really skinny.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
Really
Put
Yeah.
their
tight.
names
Everybody
on
has
them.
that massive
Yes.
collar
Yeah.
on.
So flat collars, we have them for all of our dogs. Every one of us does. And
Yes.
then we have other collars too. But
Flat collars are good for name tags.
flat
Yes.
collars are
And
great.
rabies.
name tags.
And rabies.
They're not the best for training though.
No.
That's the problem right there. If you're listening, a flat collar is not the best for training. And the reason is you don't have it on super snug because they typically will have it on
Yeah.
almost all the time,
Yeah.
usually. So it's fairly loose. In fact, it's loose enough that if they backed away from you, they probably will pull their head out of it.
Yeah.
So there's the problem. If you have a dog that is at all fearful, they should not have a flat collar when you're walking.
And it might feel tight, but they have so much loose skin on their head,
It can
it'll
just come right over their
right
ears.
off.
Yeah, when a dog is petrified, they will fight backwards to get away from whatever's petrifying them. Well, now you have a petrified dog off a leash, probably around cars,
Yeah.
or
And no collar on now.
and now no collar.
No,
And-
can't
and
call to mommy.
give up on giving that dog back to you.
Jeez. Yeah.
So we do not use flat collars at all in training. They might have the collar on, but we're not using it as a training
Yeah.
collar that I can think of.
I would say it's a little bit better, but it's the same category as like a harness.
Yeah,
Once they know
I
how
was
to
gonna
walk
say-
great,
Yeah.
sure, you can go back to it. Or
Yeah.
Sure.
just have your training collar on and your flat collar on.
Once they know stuff, like all our dogs are just on flat collars.
Yeah, because they just
They just
It
know.
is
Well,
what it
during
is.
training, because
During
like
training,
slip
yeah, yeah,
leads can't really attach a lot of stuff to them. You can use both at the
Oh
same
yeah, of course you
time.
have to.
So-
You have to have that rabies on there.
Yes.
So,
America.
and
It's
kind of a happy medium.
There.
you have flat collar that now transitions into a training collar. And then if you're concerned about your dog pulling their head out, the next step would be a martingale.
Yes.
Yeah.
Julie, what's a martingale?
The one that,
It's loose.
It's about
and
three
tight.
quarters
Yes.
of the collar is a flat collar,
yes.
Yeah.
roughly.
I don't know. My brain just died.
Oh, that's
Okay.
okay. She was making some great hand signals.
She was.
Unfortunately, none
She
of you
was
can see
trying
all these
very
hand
hard.
signals.
We're gonna start doing.
I could have guessed based on your hand signals what you were talking about. And then about a quarter or a third of the collar is loose, so it could be the same kind of material, but it's joined by two D rings. It can be a chain for a quarter or a third of it. Basically, what it allows the collar to do is snug up if the dog puts pressure against it, so they cannot pull their head out of it.
Yeah.
One of the advantages of that is what? Anybody?
You could teach dogs to walk on leashes that way because they learn how to release the pressure.
Release the pressure. So when they feel it snug up, they learn how to let it unsnug.
Yeah.
That's super important. One of the reasons that I prefer a martingale type of collar over an old-fashioned choke chain collar is, in theory, a choke chain will collapse in perpetuity because there's nothing ever stopping it except the dog's neck from continuously collapsing. The one thing I do like about martingales over that is I can size the martingale. So eventually, once it's super snug, the D rings are now touching each other, so it can't keep snugging. But let's just jump into choke chains.
Choke chains are fine if
so-
you have them on the right way. They loosen themselves. You
And
have
if
them
your
on the
dog
wrong way.
understands it,
And if you're
you
using
shouldn't be
it.
choking your dog out.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The only problem with choke chains, a lot of people use it for the fear. The dogs hear that clicking noise,
Yeah.
the loops going through the
Because they're
link.
typically made out of chain.
Yeah, and that clicking, it's like a fear. That's why you see a lot of dogs with choke chains always on a choke chain, and when they get off the choke chain, they just regress immediately.
But if you have it, there's two. If you
I'm
have,
saying you can use it correctly,
but
but,
there's
a lot
two
of people
different.
don't.
If you have it one way, it loosens. If you have it the other way, it doesn't loosen. So it always is It won't loosen
It won't
easily.
loosen as quickly,
Easy,
as
yeah.
instantaneously,
Yeah.
basically.
That-
Because with a choke chain or a slip lead, because a slip lead is basically the
A choke chain.
same,
A cloth version.
it's just
Yeah.
made out of cloth. Julie, you can explain this. If you don't put it on right, I don't
mean,
think
just
most
like-
people
just
know
like-
there's
well,
a way
just
to put one
like
on.
what Laura just said is that if you don't put it on the correct way or the correct side, then it's not going to release the
Yeah.
tension.
It's
So you're
fast.
gonna go in and add the tension, and nothing really is gonna happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Whereas if you put it on the proper way, then the release mechanism is gonna be smooth, and the dog is gonna understand how to turn on and off that pressure.
Yeah.
So, is that what you were asking?
Yeah, exactly. Because I don't think most people know there is a right and wrong way
I
to put a
100%.
slip lead or
Yeah.
a choke chain, that type of collar on a dog.
Yeah.
Right.
There literally is. There's a right way and a wrong
Yeah.
way. And if you do it wrong, it doesn't snug up as fast. But like you two just said, it doesn't release like basically instantaneously
Yeah.
because you've created a binding effect because you
Right.
have it on literally backwards.
Oh, I think some people think that should be not getting loose.
Yes, people that
That's
want
Yeah.
the collar super high and tight on the dog's
They want
head.
it to stay snug.
But they don't
Yeah.
understand the concept that,
No.
that you don't want that. You're
That
not
you-
teaching your dog anything.
They don't understand that you're going to always have to have leash pressure.
And it sucks.
Because
I
you've
know.
taught your dog to
Yeah,
operate
I only
with
work
leash pressure.
when leash pressure's there.
So now they walk great as long as there's always pressure.
Yep.
Well, that's
And they
not
never
really
learn how to be
walking great.
independent. They're always
So if you ever see dog shows and when they're prancing those dogs, they're slip
They have
leads
a
on them,
slip lead on
but
them.
it is tight and they have it tight so that dog is prancing up and that's how
So they
do
have it
so.
on backwards to keep it.
But they do that on purpose.
Yes.
'Cause
But
they need
yeah,
that dog to
there's
be
a
under
reason
control
for
all
that
the
show to
time.
have it on that way, right?
So,
Any other comments on slip leads or choke collars, choke chains?
when used
Um,
correctly, they work very well as a good intro starting collar.
Yeah, I was gonna say exactly that. It's a good tool to begin with before introducing any other
Any other
tools.
tool? Yeah,
Usually, I feel like the slip or the martingale are the two.
those are the two
you'd
that
wanna
you should start with
Yes.
leash pressure.
I would
Yeah.
say it's because from dog's point of view, because our goal here is to make it very fun for them,
Yes.
excitable, enjoyable, so they actually want to train.
Right.
And it's very hard for a dog to really take a slip lead when used not meanly, the wrong way.
yeah.
Especially like pit bulls are notorious for getting butt hurt because they think you're mad at them. It's very hard for a dog to take training, especially if you're just doing little leash pressure,
Yeah.
for them to take it as some kind of punishment
Yeah.
or some kind of negativity because you're not trying to.
Right.
Yeah.
But like say a prong collar, even though you're not trying to, some dogs do. It's too much stimulation.
Yeah.
They take it the wrong way.
It can. Yeah.
And slip leads are very easy to start a dog because you can't.
Mhm.
They won't get
An
all
introduction
stubborn.
to pressure.
Yep.
You feel
Yes.
pressure, you give to the pressure, you look and you come, and then you transition.
Yeah.
I think the main thing with most tools is they are a stepping stone to the end result that we want.
Mhm.
Yes.
Unfortunately, virtually anything we say about a tool, there's going to be an exception.
Exceptions, yes.
You might be listening and say, but my dog doesn't. Well, your dog might be the exception.
Yeah.
There is God, I just read it. I cannot remember who said it. I just read this on Facebook this week. Dog training is one of those weird professions. I'm sure there's others, but definitely dog training is one of those weird professions that two trainers can have completely opposing views on a technique or a tool. Let's go with technique. And they're both right.
Yep.
This is,
100%.
They can both be right.
I would say there could be 3 or 4 trainers with the same breed,
Yes,
and they could
and
all be right.
Because it doesn't have to do with German Shepherds you train X, Y, Pitties you
Goldens.
train. No, it's the dog in your hand
Yeah.
and the behavior and
Yep.
genetics of that dog. So, yeah, so that's why I guess it's kind of controversial as one trainer. Well, I'm right. Well, yeah, you have been all this time with that technique, but so is this other trainer.
Oh, yeah. That's why we love, I personally very much enjoy dogs that don't like treats and giving them to trainers that work here that are a little too dependent on treats to really show them you need to broaden your horizons, your
Yes.
training
Right,
skills.
right.
Because not every dog's going to like treats or like you
yeah.
or like,
a toy.
A toy.
Or like being
Right.
here.
yes.
Right. Yeah, we love to play with toys, but not all dogs are toy driven.
No.
So, just because we're motivated by it doesn't mean the dog we're training is motivated by
Yep.
it. Our job is to find what motivates the dog.
Yeah.
And then, some snarky people will sometimes say, yeah, but your dog should want to work for you, not the treat, or want
Why?
to work for you and not the toy or this. Well, yeah, I should be a billionaire too, but I'm just not. And that's just life. So yeah, do I want the dog to just want to work for me and because he loves me so much? Sure. But wouldn't he like to be motivated by some things too?
Yeah,
Sure.
or he's over motivated.
Right.
Like my
Oh, yeah.
street dog, food's in a very
Pickle.
controlled way.
Pickle.
Pickles does
Yeah,
food well, but he's so obsessed with
Yeah,
it.
we're kind of the same with Dolly, our lab. She loves toys, but if we bring out a treat,
Oh, she doesn't
she's
care
over
about
the
the toy
toys.
anymore.
It's all about the treat.
Oh yeah.
And now she's just working for the treat. She's not really working.
And for like the next 20 minutes, we're looking for that
Right.
treat. 'Cause
Yeah.
you might have more. It's very frustrating some days.
It is a
Okay,
very-
who wants to tackle prong collar? Silence around.
Prong
We should
collars.
all tackle it together.
Yeah, we will. All right. So prong collar, also called a pinch collar. I like to say they look medieval.
Yeah.
because they do.
Sometimes.
They do look medieval.
Now we're looking at it.
And we're looking at a bunch hanging on the wall. They have a bad reputation, and any tool can be misused. There is a video on YouTube of a trainer in Houston that has just a leash, a Malinois, about a year old. I don't know what he's training the dog in, but in that video, someone shot the video. He picked the dog up by the leash, hurled him to the other side of him, and body slammed him and broke his hips. And it's horrific.
The dog has a flat collar and leash on.
And it has
Yeah.
nothing but a flat collar and a leash on. So any tool, even a leash, can be used to brutalize a dog. There's another video of two trainers in Louisiana that are brutalizing this poor dog with a long line and a flat collar.
Yeah.
So
But I do think that the prong collar and the e-collar are the two tools that are the most misunderstood.
Yep.
And that
they're
is
the most
why-
demonized.
That is why clients or people just in general
Yeah.
misuse
Well,
this the most.
It's because they're so easy to spot out of a crowd. You can't pick a.
It's not even
I
that.
can't-
Hey.
I'm not even caring about
It's
like,
just
people
judgments.
see it.
That's why I'm saying
more
that's
about
why.
how they use it.
No, I'm
Like,
thinking there's a lot of
people-
trainers that misuse.
Oh, I
Yes.
agree. No, I'm
We're not there
saying
yet, so
I'm
yeah.
saying that's why there's such a stigma.
Yes.
Is you can't pick an abusive dog trainer out of a crowd, but you can see that prong collar
Yeah.
or an e-collar.
Yeah, some people just assume if a dog has a prong collar on, then that person, or just go with trainer, that trainer is a correction-based trainer.
Or it's
Yeah.
That's a leap of
Craziness.
weirdness.
or it's an aggressive dog. It's like
Yeah.
muzzles too give a bad rep.
Quite often, dogs that need a prong collar are because they're so freaking friendly
Yeah.
and pulling, wanted to see everything, explore everything. A prong collar, if it's sized inappropriately, before we got into training, I thought loose is good, right?
Yeah.
I don't want this thing on too snug.
Or I got a
It
big
should be
dog. I
all
need a
floppy.
big,
Oh, you need a
giant
big
prong
one. You need
collar.
a 2.0 or
Right.
something. Yeah. No.
If your prong collar is too loose, it actually could cause pain to your
Yes.
dog because only 2 or 3 of the prongs are hitting where their larynx is when you pull up against it.
So, caveat on that. So the prong collars we use have a martingale style feature with them.
Yeah.
It's a extra loop of chain at the end.
Right.
Because there are flat collar prong collars
There are.
that when they pull like a flat collar just hits them in the jugular.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
the ones we use, is why we have this certain brand, Herman Springer's the style we
Herman
use, is
Springer.
because it pulls all the way around at the same time, like a slip
It
lead.
compresses. It doesn't poke. I
Yes.
guess is
Yeah.
a good
Yeah.
way to say that. Do you guys agree?
But also
Yeah, I mean,
spreads
it's
the
meant to
pressure
just-
out.
Meant to distribute pressure evenly.
You bring up a great point. So if anyone's thinking about going out and getting a prong collar, do not go to
Wherever.
Amazon or Chewy and get the cheapest prong collar you can.
No.
If your prong collar doesn't cost $20, $30, $40, you are not getting the right
Right now
one.
it's good. Yourself.
You need to get a Herm Springer.
They're from Germany.
They're made in Germany. When you put your hand on the points, they're blunt. A
And
lot of the ones you buy from that are made overseas in China, of course, they're freaking sharp. And they're inconsistent. Maybe 3/4 of them are not sharp, and then all of a sudden you get 2 or 3. Hey, if there's only one on there that's sharp, that's all that matters.
And they don't have the trach plate either, so it's all they go the same way around the whole neck.
Mhm.
right,
so it
so it
does
doesn't
not-
really compress.
No.
It
I don't know what it does not.
It doesn't work the same.
Yeah.
Hermspringers cost more, but there's some engineering involved. There's the quality of the metal and the finish of making sure there's not a sharp point anywhere on that thing. They're all blunt. It's worth the extra 10,
Oh yeah,
15,
'cause I show them to people all day, every day, and the amount of people that you hand it to them, they're like, "Oh, that's not sharp. It just looks
Yeah.
bad."
Yeah.
Obviously, don't ever put anything on your dog that you won't put on your arm or your leg.
Yeah.
And give it a tug and see what the feeling. There's nothing I've ever put on a
Yeah.
dog that none of us that we
Yeah.
haven't put on.
Well, and the
ourselves.
amount of dogs that people, oh, my dog just pulls through prong collars, doesn't care anymore. And then we use a Herman Springer, and it's like magic.
Why do you call it Herman?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But
You're stuck with
They're
that.
using, a lot of people use it wrong too.
They
You
do.
should use it exactly like you do that slip lead
Yep.
because it's.
Well,
release-
a lot of them, they buy the cheapest one, and the dogs just will pull
Well,
through
it's
it
because
and
they
not
don't
care.
realize there is a difference.
There is.
So
Very
if you're
much.
listening to this podcast, you now know there is a difference in prong collars or pinch collars, as they're sometimes called.
but you still use them the same.
It's just a better attention getter, really,
It's
getting
pressure.
eye
Get
contact.
the pressure off.
The problem with a regular flat collar or slip lead is they can ignore that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Prong
No, I'm saying,
collars are
yeah,
mostly
no.
just more uncomfortable to get their attention.
Yeah, it gets their attention.
Are you talking about the dog?
Yes.
It's uncomfortable to get the dog's attention?
No,
no flat collar. Some dogs.
flat
don't.
collar versus
They're-
prong collar.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's not hurting them, it's just more uncomfortable.
I don't know if it's more uncomfortable.
I would think so.
Well, it is obviously more. It does a different feeling because the slip lead is just cloth around the neck. So, what is your theory about the prong collar, Miss Julie?
I think that so long as you introduce it properly, depending on what you're like, I think about what I do when I have a dog that I decide to put on a prong, what my first session is all about. I want the dog to learn how to feel the prong, like what the quote unquote pop and release, the pressure and everything. But I want to involve a lot of excitement to it. So whether it be rewards, food, play, toys, whatever, I want them to realize, even though I'm feeling this quote unquote uncomfortable thing, this great thing happens afterwards when I actually follow through with what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of people, you can tell the trainers that are not putting in the work, where they just put on a prong collar on a dog and they think it's going to be this magical quick fix.
Yep.
And all the hard work that they did not put in shows whenever the dog suddenly is around new distractions, new dogs, new people, a new place, because they don't really know. And so when you actually have to use it in a correctional manner, then the dog is like, well, I have no clue what
What that
happened.
means,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't
And
even
why
know.
that
Yeah.
just happened.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know. And then for all he knows, the reason why could be because of the person that just walked in front of him, there's just a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
I think most tools, prong collar being one example of what I'm about to say, and then e-collar, the other, electronic collar or shock collar, depending on what you know it as, they cover up gaps in training.
Yeah.
They're
most
just
trainers.
so effective and they're so easy.
Well, it allows some
really
trainers
helps
to
you
be lazy
That's the thing,
and
though.
skip.
But they're not.
They're not.
Important.
Exactly. I
Prong
was gonna say
collars,
that's the
if you
thing.
have to be, we call it popping, but you have to give it a correction pop multiple times. Your dog does not know.
Oh, I
does not.
know,
Well,
but
yeah, but
from a
you're
layman's
explaining-
perspective, it looks like it's working so well. But
Yeah.
from a dog trainer that's experienced,
But
goes,
if you-
no, you don't. You're not doing
if,
it right.
If you see someone always, like Laura said, popping or, giving a quick tug on a leash,
yeah.
all the time for the same thing, the dog does not understand.
Yeah.
So you skip that step.
Yep.
You're just using a tool to cover up a gap in
Yeah.
your training.
Yes.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. Our goal, obviously, is that if a dog is on any tool, they transition in it, through it, and out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we can't want that more than the dog. There
And
are
we
some.
can't want that more than the owner.
Right.
Well, I
For sure.
think, almost all of our dogs used a prong at some point
Oh, yeah.
during their training
Mhm.
career, and now they're all off of it.
Anything else on the prong?
If you want to use one, find a
yes.
good trainer.
If you decide to use a prong collar, you currently have a prong collar, or you're considering to get a prong, just make sure that you don't leave the prong collar
Oh,
on.
yeah.
Oh,
That
God, yes.
too, yes.
I think that's what a lot of
Yeah.
owners do after
They put their dog in the backyard and leave it
Yes.
overnight with it on.
Yes.
Yeah.
That can just be a recipe for really bad things.
They tend to get snagged on everything.
But it's just always rubbing on them always.
Well, that too, yeah.
It's just a training collar. It's when you're training your dog. Your dog, if they're not in train mode, it does not need this.
Yeah, it's not a nice
Right.
loose flat collar that they could just have their name on it forever.
That's a great point.
And then remember, if you start as a puppy, puppies grow. So you need to add leash.
Yeah.
seems
And
like-
size it appropriately.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to do that, then get with a trainer so it's sized appropriately. If they don't know how to do it and they're not like, you can tell when someone really knows how to do something or not. If they look like they're kind of muddling their way through it, no, don't let him do anything with your dog or her. All right. The last tool that I think we'll talk about today, because we're running a little long,
E-collar.
e-collars. Also called electronic collars, shock collars, any other names about nicknames for that?
Oh,
Oh, some people call them a training collar.
yeah.
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 Training.
Yeah.
So there's some trainers that call them training collars. Me personally, my thought on that is if you're dealing with a trainer that calls an e-collar a training collar,
You should
you
go
know what?
somewhere
You
else.
should go somewhere
Yeah,
else
that's
because
Very
they're
sketchy.
embarrassed by the tool they're using, so they're naming it something innocuous.
Yeah.
It is what it is. It's an e-collar, electronic collar. I don't call it a shock collar because that's freaking stupid.
Yeah.
You can take a rag soaked in gasoline, put the e-collar on the rag with both contacts touching it, turn it at full volume, push the button. Nothing's going to happen. There's not enough shock or heat or anything involved in that. It doesn't create heat for anything to occur. Now, that doesn't mean that if you have an e-collar, a good quality e-collar that goes up to, let's say, 100 or 120, if you have it on 100,
You should not put it on a dog.
it definitely
120?
it
No,
definitely
some
can
dogs I
get
like.
high
Some
and be
young
very
dogs.
uncomfortable.
Yeah, I get
But
that.
Yeah.
here's the problem with the e-collars. People get too wrapped around the axle of the number on the dial.
There we go.
Yeah.
They're like,
Always.
oh, you're at a 60, you're at an 11, you're at a 2, you're at a 110. It goes back to, for every dog, there's an exception, so there's no correct real answer in dog training. It depends on the amount of environmental
Stimuli.
situation, the
Yes.
stimulation, and your personal dog
Yeah.
that determine, your dog should determine the number on the
Yeah.
dial, not you.
That's very true.
And not a trainer. The dog lets you know what they feel, what they notice, and it'd be an hour plus for us to even kind of talk about e-collars with any due diligence.
Yeah.
But the key is don't worry about the number. What you want to worry about is do not freaking get on eBay or Amazon and
No.
buy some cheap $30,
No.
$60 e-collar. If you're going to put an e-collar on a dog, it should cost somewhere between $150 and $500.
Yep.
$150, cheapest one. And the reason is the delay in you pushing a button and something happening on the other end. The cheaper the collar, the longer the delay. You're now confusing your dog. Your timing is wrong. Even if your timing is correct, pushing the button, the delivery of the stimulation to reinforce what you just said is wrong. Also, like Garmin, I can't stand theirs. It's kind of expensive, but God, that thing does hurt.
It hurts.
When it's at medium, it feels like someone's sticking a
Because
pin
they
in my
don't
hand.
have enough range, so they jump up numbers so
Yeah.
fast, just like the sport dog.
Sport dog.
Same thing.
I don't like sport dog.
Yeah, you
either.
should have something with it.
And
at least
yeah,
100%.
there's a lot of trainers that use it. It is a good quality as far as durability and meant to go in the water and a great
Blah,
distance.
blah, blah.
But it requires you, like you said, jump too many numbers, and all of a sudden your dog may, like on a
I already started on a sport dog.
I would say
and
and
ours
it was too
dog
sensitive.
did too. It
Yeah.
is. It's too.
I would say a sport dog is good for what it's built for.
Sport dogs.
Hunting.
for sport
Yeah.
dog.
I don't know,
Hunting,
Dogtra
sports.
and
Dogtra and e-collar technologies are the e-communicator is
what I think is one
our
of the best.
our
Yeah.
two
Those
favorites.
are the two best.
There is another one, I don't know the name, and they're very expensive, and but we've never used them, but they're supposed to be really good. But they're $1,000.
Yeah. A good $200-$300
Three.
e-collar is good enough. It should be able to go in the water,
$1,000.
1,000?
not be a big deal, go at least a quarter mile away.
But I have a lot, like at least 100 settings, because
Yes.
like
And then
my
at
my
least
dogs
100 because-
personally range from like a 3 to like a 30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're polar opposite dogs. You really got to learn your dog. Or some dogs, they don't care.
And once again, if you are using an e-collar with your dog, or you see a trainer using an e-collar, if they're always pushing the button at the same command over and over and over, that is revealing a gap in the training.
Yeah.
Because they're using the e-collar to compensate for the gap in training that didn't
Yeah.
occur.
Now-
E-collar really, should be used to pair a command.
Yeah.
And then later, much later, when the dog understands how to communicate, you can correct a dog, but don't confuse correction as I want to make my dog yelp. Who the hell wants to do that? Nobody. You just want to remind the dog, no, I'm really serious. I need you to look at me. With our dogs, they're all e-collar trained. We only put our e-collars on our dogs if we're off-leash hiking.
Yep.
And it's for the what if. What if there's a rattlesnake out there and I need your attention right freaking now so you don't get bit by a rattlesnake because you want to go play with it.
They should also, in my opinion, be your in-game training tool.
Yes.
You should slowly build up to that. Start off with like a slip lead, then a prong collar if you need, you might not. And then once you guys are ready, you can do all the commands phenomenally well. Then you could start doing e-collar work.
Yeah.
And we used to, when we first started training, pretty much used e-collars with most dogs. Now we hardly ever do. In fact, our clients have to specifically ask us to teach their dog how to communicate with an e-collar. The biggest reason we made that transition is because of our client. Most people their timing is so poor that they have a leash in one hand, an e-collar in the other hand. They're dealing with a scenario that they're pushing the button at the wrong time. So it's really confusing their dog, not helping their dog. And it causes frustration with the client. Like you said, if you want to use an e-collar, there should be a reason. You're wanting to do some, distance work with your dog. So first you've taught your dog all these commands all the way up. And now you're just layering one more means to communicate with your dog at a great distance through distractions. If distractions are present. Any other comments on the e-collar that I didn't, you want to add to or detract from? I kind of go back to the same thing. If you're dealing with, looking at getting your dog trained and you meet with a trainer and they only do e-collar training,
Run fast.
I would kind of go the other way.
Yeah.
Because that means they don't, you know what? I gave a tour to a training company that's been around for over 10 years the other day that came in and they saw one of our trainers working with a dog and, we don't have an e-collar on. And they asked me, well, how do you train the dog? And I thought he was joking. He literally meant, how do we train the dog if we're not using an e-collar? Yep. That unfortunately, with a lot of e-collar trainers, they do not understand how to train a dog without an e-collar.
It's the same thing with prong collars or pure positivity trainers.
Yeah.
There's so many exceptions. You need to have a variety of training tools and a variety of training approaches to even try to cover all your bases with all these different kinds of dogs.
Because purely positive can go back the same way. They're treat dependent, so the dog really doesn't know what you think that dog
Or
knows.
Right, because you're basically bribing him to do everything.
All the time. If you have to,
Now when you really need him to do it, he can't because there's no treat. You don't have one.
because that squirrel is always going to be sexier than that hot dog.
Or you have a husky like mine that goes, there's no consequences. I'll just do whatever I want anyways. You're just going to yell at me? Whatever. I do not care.
So when it comes down to tools and you're looking to get your dog trained, talk to the trainer about the tools they use and then how they use them. Have them give you verbal examples of this is how we would use it. And in real world, this is how you would use it. And does that agree with you? If so, maybe you're a good fit. If not, go talk to another trainer.
There is one tool that I would categorize as like a choke chain that a lot of people use is the gentle leaders.
Oh, we forgot about them.
We totally skipped the gentle leader.
Because
Because Julie loves them.
so many better options.
Yeah. All right. So Julie, whip up on the gentle leader and we'll end with, if you have a dog that pulls and you have a gentle leader on.
That's the one that
Yes,
goes around the snout of your dog to pull your dog's head slightly to the left or to the right so they can't pull.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I can think of when I see those tools is if the dog decides to run after a squirrel, your dog is gonna die.
Yes.
Because he's gonna go like I know, once again you can't see what I'm doing, but like the dog is gonna go towards the squirrel and then his head is literally gonna
go the other way.
Jerk sideways.
Or
like that's
he's going to get his snout out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's going to constrict and rip flesh. And we have
It's
trained
all
a few
bad.
dogs with some hellacious scars, lifetime
their nose.
scars around their entire snout because that gentle, air quote, leader. Can't stand gentle leaders. There's
Or
nothing
they-
gentle about a gentle
Or they
leader.
tighten it to the point where the dog can't get it off.
Can't breathe.
And now they can't pant
They
regular
can't pant
body heat.
like they need to.
Yeah.
The only good thing about a gentle leader is whoever invented it named it great.
Good PR.
Good marketing name. But there's nothing gentle about a gentle leader. If you need a gentle leader, your dog needs to be taught how to walk on a leash.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's as simple as that.
And I would 9 times out of 10, I'd say a prong collar's a
I'd
much
put
better
I'd put a
option.
prong collar on a dog all day long before I'd
Any
ever
day.
slap a horrific
I'd put a
gentle
harness
leader
and
on
a
a dog.
flexi leash before.
Yeah. They're just,
That
I've
is
seen
bad.
so many poor dogs with
They
some
just
hellacious
optically
scars.
look better. They're
Right.
so much worse.
They just look better, but
It-
they're not.
Yeah.
They're extremely painful when things go wrong.
They are not a horse.
Yeah, they're not a horse. Good
Not a
idea.
horse.
It's not a halter.
Yeah.
All right. So if you are struggling with your dog and need help, we'd love to be part of you and your dog's training journey. Reach out to us and we'll talk about what your struggles are and how we could be part of helping you guys have a joyful life together and have a dog that's a joy to live with. Next week, we will be talking about, what are we talking about next week, Wyatt?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, we'll worry about next week. I cannot. Oh, traveling. If you are getting ready to
Yes.
travel for Memorial Day weekend, the summer, that's coming upon us. We'll be talking about key things that you need to know about traveling with your dog or boarding your dog. or
Boarding,
looking
that was
for
the big
boarding,
topic.
because
Yes.
too many people put it off at the last minute, and then you are boarding your dog in a horrific situation because they're the only company or place that has any openings. You need to be thinking in advance, and we'll talk
Typically,
about what you're
places that have
looking for.
availability, like during Christmas, you don't
You don't want your dog there.
There's a reason
Yeah,
they have
there's a reason
availability.
they have openings the week of Christmas
Oh, yeah.
because nobody else would put their dog there.
It's for like, what, 2 months usually out? 3
Yeah.
months?
So yeah, we'll be talking about that next week. And till then, make sure you follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Excuse me, Canine Culture Dog Training DFW. And until next week,
Go have fun with your dog.